You got black tape.
No, see, my father and grandfather and uncle, they come here to old Doaksville in the summer of 1896. And a lot of things happened between then and time I can remember that I don't remember anything, don't really know anything about it, I'm just hearing them talk about it.
Well, that's what we're after too.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, well, two different things. Horse thieves was bad back in that time. And right along through, I don't know exactly where the old trail was, but right along on this side of Gates's Creek was they call it the Horse Thief Trail from down in Texas, plumb up through these mountains here and on into southern Kansas and western, southeast Kansas and Missouri. Well, their hands, their buddies would steal and get a bunch of horses ganged up there in Missouri or Kansas someplace, and these fellas would bring them through here down in Texas and leave them and pick up another bunch and come back. Well, when Fort Towson was young, I wouldn't know just exactly the year, but it must have been along about, well, let's see, Fort Towson, I believe old Doaksville moved down there in 1902, I believe. It might have been 1903. While there was 2 or 3 officers following this bunch. They had a big bunch of horses, and been in the spring, and there'd been an awful lot of high water. Well, they knew Red River so big that they couldn't cross with those horses on Red River, and so they one of the men, when they got here, even with 4,000, quit, left the others and come into town, and they knew they was getting right on them, and would ask for help. Well, there was 3 or 4 men went with him, and my uncle was one of them. And just about dark, they eased along while they found the Comish River, right where Comish River run into Red River. The Comish River was so big they couldn't cross, and Red River is all over the country. And they made camp right down in where that run in. Well, it was getting too late to see the chute when they got them located. So those men stayed there, spent the night, just had them, of course it was, come in this way, just about say a half circle there, had them surrounded. And the next morning, when they all got out, these men from Missouri, officers of Missouri, knew just how many men there were. When they all got out, I think they'd put up a tent and got out to cooking their breakfast. While they called on to throw their hands up, and they didn't, and these men was all hid behind logs and big trees and so on, and their sights already trained on them, and when they went for their guns, they just shot them all to pieces. And they brought them up, I can show you where all 5 of them buried in one big grave right there in Fort Towson Cemetery.
Now this was the officers that got killed?
No,
that
was
was
the
outlaws.
outlaws, the horse thieves.
What year was that?
It was about, I don't know what year it was, but it was about 19 and 3, I'd say, someplace along in there.
Did they name, when they moved, the town of Fort Towson came in, was it called Doaksville to start with? Or
No,
did they just name it Fort
they
Towson?
named it Fort Towson.
Now, where is Doaksville?
It's across the creek over here close to Fort Towson, or old Doaksville Cemetery, right on the east side.
Is the town still there?
No, there hasn't been no town. They moved it all into Fort Towson when they built it. See, when they built the railroad through this country, why they moved the post office into the railroad and moved all the town in there to the railroad, right where Fort Towson is now.
So what's your full name again?
Russell Thornburgh,
Russell Thornburgh.
or I sign OR. My name,
B-E-R-G, B-U-R-G.
B-U-R-G-H. That H is silent on it.
Okay. This is February 23rd, 1988.
Yeah.
My name is Joe Todd, and this is an interview with Mr. Russell Thornburgh in Fort Towson, Oklahoma. So where were you born?
In Fort Towson,
And when's your birthday?
November the 5th, 1980.
1980. Who was your father?
Ori Thornburgh,
O-R
O-R-A.
Thornburgh. And your mother?
Mattie Thornburgh Teeters.
T-E-E-T-E-R-S.
Yeah.
And when did you folks come to Oklahoma?
Come to the Indian Territory in the summer of 1896.
And where'd they come from?
Southeast Missouri, Marble Hill, Missouri.
Why'd they come to Indian Territory?
Well, it is new country, and I guess they had more or less people going west back in those days. It was for hunting a better place to live, I guess, was it. And,
What type of work did your father do?
my father was a carpenter, helped, well, originally in Missouri they were farmers, and they farmed after they come here. But when Fort Towson started, why, he helped build lots of the first houses he built there in Fort Towson.
And did you know your grandparents?
I barely remember my grandmother, my father's mother. I never knew my mother's parents.
Were any one of your grandfathers in the Civil War?
Yes, my great-grandfather Thornburgh fought all the way through the Civil War, and my grandfather got old enough and fought about a month before the Civil War was over.
What were their first names?
One of them name was Benjamin Thornburgh, and I can't tell you for sure.
Ever hear any stories about him in the Civil War? What he did?
No, the biggest story there is about that, this great-grandfather was raised on a family plantation in the Tennessee River Valley, there close to Knoxville, Tennessee. And he had 6 brothers. And when he was a young man, he was, I guess, kind of the outlaw of the bunch. Anyway, he had to go west, like lots of young men did in that day and time. Well, he got to the Mississippi River, and he crossed the Mississippi River there at Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and got, I believe it's 40 miles west to Marble Hill, Missouri, thereabout, and I guess he was running low on funds, and he stopped to work at a sawmill. And the sawmill man had a grown daughter, and he met her and married her and always stayed there.
How did he travel west?
Well, I guess horseback, I don't know. But it was all horse and buggy days then, of course, and I don't think there's any trains. Well, we'll get on to, now in the Civil War, he married this girl and just stayed there, and when the Civil War come on, now his people in Tennessee fought with the North, But I don't know whether it was because the way his wife's people thought, or whether it was his thoughts or what, but he fought with the South. In other words, he fought again his 6 brothers during the Civil War. And there was one of them wounded and captured down in Alabama and died in prison camp down there in Alabama. Well, anyway, after the war, well, I guess that kind of, the way they fought during the war, that kind of, in other words, they didn't have anything to do with each other. But one of his brothers had a son that had grown up and went to West Point and was a major in the United States Army, and he was killed in a Indian massacre out at, he was stationed at Fort Towson, Wyoming, and they had a massacre, I think it was just across in Colorado, south of Fort Towson, and anyway, he took a detachment of men, went down there and got in an ambush, and they was all killed but one. There's one man got away and got back to the fort, and by the time he got back, well, of course the Indian, time he got back with reinforcements, well, the Indians done gone, done scalped all of them, and this troop had a little dog that called their mascot, but this little dog was the only thing that's found left alive. He was still there with his, well, anyway, get back to the family story. This brother from Tennessee come through Missouri, come by to see his brother on his way out there to settle up his son's business. And my great-grandfather raised and trained fine horses. He was a horse breeder. And my father said he was up 12 towards grown when this happened, and that this uncle or great uncle from Tennessee wanted a horse that always said it was a fine horse, all right. So he gave his brother an unusual price for the horse if he delivered it to him in Tennessee. And said the family all thought he'd just give all that extra price for the horse to get him back to Tennessee. I think their mother was still alive at that time. Well, anyway, my father, he rode the horse to Cape Girardeau, the old man did, and loaded on a steamboat, went down the Mississippi to the mouth of the Ohio River, and up the Ohio River to the mouth of the Tennessee River, and up the Tennessee River by steamboat to close to where they lived. And then he was gone months or so, and he rode home, and my father he rode the steamboat back to Cape Girardeau when he come home, and my father took an extra horse and met him at Cape Girardeau and picked him up. Yeah.
What type of house did your parents have when you were born?
It was front porch across the front, 2 large rooms, and then a big side room across the back. The kitchen dining area is one end of it, and then a bedroom partitioned off. In other words, back in those days, there was three bedrooms, but one of them served as a bedroom and living room too. And
Was it a frame house?
no, it was 1 by 12 box.
Okay. And as a small boy, what chores did you do around the house?
Well, up till I was 9 years old, we lived there in town, and I never I was out there, of course, back in those days where our cattle run outside and our hogs run outside, and I had hogs, and I was, far back as I can remember, I was right out there at the barn, in the barn lot with my father and helped taking care of course I couldn't milk, but I was out there when he was, we always kept a milk cow. Of course, at 9 years old, we moved out on the farm, and I made a full ham then. And
What breed of hogs did you have at that time?
well, at there in Fort Towson, I had an old, when I was a little bitty boy, I can barely remember it. I had an old gentleman that kind of took a liking to me, and he gave me a sow pig, and I think she was full-blood Poland China. And we raised, I believe she had her second litter of pigs, and they was up great big old shoats running outside down the old spring where the early days of the Fort Towson got the water from. Then she come in one evening, and I think there was 9 of the shoats, and there's 8 of them gone. Well, of course, that was a common thing here in this country then, hog stealing and cow stealing. And anyway, my father decided it wouldn't do to turn them out anymore, and so decided to feed this one big shoat out and butcher it, and he sold the sow for me. I remember she brought $15, and he put the money in the bank for me, and I don't remember just how many years. And when we moved out of town, out on the farm, why, I took that money and bought a heifer calf. When I sold my cattle out, when I thought, or that is most of them, when I thought I was going to World War II, well, I sold 150 some odd head of cattle, and they was all offsprings from the calf. Yeah.
Where was the farm your father bought?
Well, it was, let me see now. Steady just a little bit. Now this is section line over here. One. About 4 miles east of here, and what would it be about 2 miles north? In other words, it was 5 miles from Fort Towson out there. It's 3 miles northwest of Swink down here.
How many acres?
80 acres.
80 acres.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the work you did on the farm out there.
Well, when we first moved out there, we raised corn and cotton. Of course, we had cattle. We raised corn and cotton, and a big garden. My parents, see, Thornburgh's a German name. There's not much German blood left in us, but yet that raising and putting up stuff, they sure had that.
What type of corn? Did you have sweet corn, field corn?
Well, it was yellow dent corn. So that was before the day of the hybrid
Yeah.
corn. It was yellow dent corn, most of what we raised. And
What about cotton?
well, I don't remember just what kind, variety of cotton we had. I don't remember. I know they used to raise one kind after the boll weevil was hit. They called half and half. It's a little quicker maturing, I believe, is the reason they raised that. But and one thing I want to tell you about, for years I helped make a 55-gallon barrel of kraut every summer.
What's the recipe for that?
Well, I can't tell you. We put so many dish pans full of chopped up cabbage in the barrel and so much salt, and I forgot how much salt. And one of my main jobs, my father had made a wooden maul, oh ye big around, so long, and with a long handle to it. And I stood there and pounded and beat that cabbage and bruised it, you know, and that salt would make that brine come out, and we'd fill that barrel plumb up. And he had a false head that had just slipped down in there, and put that in it, and then we'd put rocks on it to hold it down, and then put a tie white bran sack or something over that, and then turn it wash tub down over it, keep the rain out of it, and he'd have sat there and we'd use out of it till the next year. And then we got into the boll weevils hit, and I know last year we had cotton we never even took a sack in the field. We had cotton stalks high as a man's head, and not a boll of cotton on. And my father said, boys, we can't do that. Said we'll starve to death, lose everything we got. And he said, I don't know. Said, I've been reading something about they're growing sweet potatoes down in Arkansas. Said, I'm going to go to Arkansas and try to learn something. So he got on the train. That's the only way we was to go then. And he was gone about a week, and he come back, and he said, told us, says they're build their curing houses out of logs down there, and he learned the whole story. And so we went to work and built a house that with bins in it. We put 500 bushels of sweet potatoes in those bins, and he got potato seed. We raised our slips and set out and raised more than enough potatoes to fill the house. We had a lot to feed the culls, feed the stock, you know. Well, the way to get rid of them was put them in a wagon, no team mules a wagon, I'd haul them 4 Towson, swing, value it, peddle them out for $1 a bushel. Well, about the second year, there was a man in Mount Lubbock, Texas, come in here with a truck and hunting potatoes. But anyway, he come out there and he made a deal with us to buy all we had for $1 a bushel loaded on his truck there at our house. So, and he wanted more, and so we went to work and built another house that'd hold 1,000 bushels. And there for, well, till the boys started marrying, my father died, and so on, scattered off and everything. Well, we raised sweet potatoes every year.
Is that a pretty good business?
Well, back in those times, when we made pretty good money, we'd put up 1,500 bushels every year of saleable potatoes, and that's $1,500, and that was a lot of money back in them days, you know.
When you had cotton, how many pounds of cotton could you pick in one day?
About 200. I wasn't a cotton picker. Now, there's lots of boys my size and so on who pick 400 or 500 pounds a day, but about 200 pounds. But my dad ruined us. He told us to pick cotton, but he told us what a hickory width it was for if we put leaves and trash in with it too. And so I just never could, you know, a real cotton picker, anything comes on his hand goes in his sack. Well, boy, it didn't work that way with my dad, and he trained us that way, and I never could pick cotton. None of us never were real cotton pickers. Now I could snap corn with anybody. I could pull as much corn as anybody, and I could even shuck corn off the cob. Shuck it off of the stalk. My dad, they did that in Missouri. Had what they called a thing that went on your thumb to stick through that and just, well, after you learned it, you could just roll that ear corn out of the shuck, you know, leave the shuck on the stalk and just load it in your wagon, just shuck corn.
Where was the cotton gin?
There was 2 here at Fort Towson.
You know who ran them?
Yes, first I remembered, I don't remember his initials, an old gentleman by the name of Cawley. I think he had built the gym there. It was right down well where the gym sits under the lake now.
What was his last name?
Cawley.
Cawley.
Yeah. And then there was another gym put in by Charlie Smith up from that. It run for years there.
How do those gyms operate?
Well, they was powered with a steam engine. They had big boilers. Most of them had 2 big boilers. And they were pulled in with a steam engine, you see. And
Did you raise sorghum cane?
yes, we raised sorghum cane for years. We never did. I learned to make it. Had a neighbor that had a mill right there, and us boys, there's 4 of us brothers. I was the oldest of the bunch. And we would help him and pay him for making ours. And we would as a general rule, we'd make 100 gallons or something like that. But I remember one time we had a extra big crop, and we made syrup as long as we was able to buy buckets, put it in, and still had barrels of cane. And I went to Greenville, Texas, and I believe give $2 a piece for Coke barrels. They were new barrels. We had to take the heads out and clean the Coke and paraffin out of them, and fill those with syrup, 4 barrels. In other words, 4 55-gallon barrels, filled them plumb full of syrup. Well, we kept them for about 2 years, and we hadn't sold all of our bucket syrup yet then, and so finally there was a man we knew. He was a whiskey maker. He offered us $25 a barrel for that syrup. Well, we wanted our money out of it, and we just sold it to him. And actually, I'm not going to say who it was, but you know who it was. It was right on up north where y'all live now.
Now, he used the
He
sorghum?
used that sorghum in place of sugar to make wildcat whiskey. Yeah.
Was he the biggest moonshiner around here?
Well, I guess he was at that time. Yeah.
Are there very many moonshiners in this area?
There used to be worlds of them. If there's one in the country, I don't know of it anymore. I don't know.
Oh, back in those days.
But back in those days, lots of them were. The fact of the business is, there was one time that we were the only family that in the whole big area there for maybe 5-mile radius that wasn't monking the whiskey some way. Yeah.
Where'd you start school?
I started school in Fort Towson, but of course when we moved out of Fort Towson, then we had to walk 3 miles to Swank School. And we did that for several years, and then got a little schoolhouse built out there in the neighborhood. And went to school there several years, and about the time I'd quit going to school, they consolidated the district, and then we hauled them on the start, hauled the children into Swank with teams and covered wagons, and then it advanced to the first on start with, I bought a 28 model Chevrolet 1.5-ton truck, and a man built me a wooden school body on it, and there was a man on the south side of Swank done the same, and we hauled children several years in that, and finally the state condemned those, that the wooden bodies wasn't safe for the children, and forced this district, well, they tried to force us to buy regular school buses, but myself or the other man either didn't want to get into it like that, and so the district finally bought the buses, and I drove one of them for several years.
How big was the route that you covered in the early days?
Oh, let's see. I covered all north of the highway, railroad. I guess I'd probably drive maybe 50 miles on
And
the
you
road.
drive one of the horse and wagons too?
Well, no, there was 2 horse and wagons that covered that, for that. But then after we got the trucks, why, they put all on the north side of the highway together and all on the south side of the railroad in town together.
Could you give me a description of Fort Towson when you lived here?
Yeah. When I first remember Fort Towson, there was a big sawmill was sitting up there, and there was 2 banks in Fort Towson. There was a dentist there, and 4 to 5 doctors there, 2 gins, a veterinarian, he had an office there. There was a jewelryman office there, a jewelry store there.
What were the people's names that ran these?
Well, now there was old Dr. Fault, one of the doctors. Old Dr. Bonner was another doctor. And then there was a Dr. McPherson. And there was other doctors, but I just can't remember the names of them. But old Dr. Fault and old Dr. Bonner was kind of the originals. Really, they were, I think, was the first doctors that Fort Towson ever had. And then others came in as the town grew. And there was, I done told you about this gins, and there's a Pine Belt Lumber Company that run the big mill. And of course there were churches, and I remember the first car that ever come to Fort Towson.
Tell me about that.
There was a man by the name of, he was the first electrician, is when the Fort Towson first started building. His name was Frank Whitten. He was a young man, came from someplace and done all the early day wiring of the houses there in Fort Towson. Well, I don't know what model, what make this car was, but I'll tell you what it looked like. It looked like a buggy without any shafts or tongue in it. And you sat up there, the seat and everything looked just like a buggy, and had the top to lay back or up, whichever you wanted it. And they sat up there with 2 levers, and they guided them front wheels. And the wheels looked just like a buggy wheel, and they had rubber tires on them, but they wasn't about that big around, the tires wasn't. And Lord, you talk about trouble, but that thing caused trouble. The stock here in this country was afraid of if it was 2 bears. Even when we lived in town, far back as I can remember, my father had sold our horse stock, didn't have any horses. But my uncle lived just across yard fence between us, had a big gray horse and a buggy. And that was the 2 families' only mode of travel back then. And any time when you met one of them cars or he come up behind you, that old big gray horse, you had to run away. Now, that's all there was to it. And they were sure afraid of it.
What did you think when you first saw that car?
Well, of course, I didn't know. I was just a little kid, and it looked like a booger to me, the same as it did to stop. Yeah.
Do you have any questions about Fort Towson?
Well, you don't know what year Fort Towson was
No, I think it was started in 1902, but I'm not 100% sure of that. That is, I don't know whether, it seemed like they moved the post office in 1902, but I'm not plumb sure now. I have knew, but I forgot.
What about Doaksville? Do you have any stories about old Doaksville?
Well, I know one but it's too long to go into. Well, I'll tell this one. There was, I can't remember, now of course I don't remember, I wasn't born in 1908, and it was moved, I think, 1902 down there in Fort Towson. But I heard my father tell about there was I knew this old man. He moved in and run a store till he died there in Fort Towson. His name was Rosenthal. He was a Jew, and a German Jew, and Backcock was his byword. Well, I think it was his store. My father was there on Saturday, and men sitting around, I guess in the summertime, talking, and they heard thrash back behind the counter, and the owner of the store jumped up and run around there and said, "My gosh," said, "y'all come and look here." And they got up and went around there and looked, and there was a colored boy, old Aunt Jenny's, one of her boys. Rats had got bad in there, and this store owner had took a half watermelon and poisoned it with arsenic. And this little fella got back in there prowling around, see what he could find, I guess, and he found that watermelon. He went to eat and then killed him. And it was him a kicking, dying, what they heard. Yeah.
That other story you said was too long.
Well, it's a story that I knew the man. My father knew him here at Old Doaksville. When he the man was here when my father come here. He was raised down in Arkansas, and he married down there in Arkansas, and he was a young man, and he his wife had two brothers. Well, they got into it, and him and her brother got into it, and one of the boys picked up a chopping axe and made for him, and he told him to stop, and he didn't, and he shot his foot off. Well, back in those days, why, you could come out of Arkansas, Texas, Kansas, wherever you come from, and get into the Indian Territory, and their law couldn't come in here and get you. And there was a lot of people here in the territory that way back in them days.
What was his name?
Huh?
What was his name?
His name was Jim Parsons. Well, there was here at Old Doaksville, there's a man by the name of Cravens owned a sawmill out at the edge of town, and this man Parsons was working for him. Well, somebody broke into this Cravens' house and stole $300. Well, back then they had no banks here, you know, and so he got a couple of men with him on horses, and everything was horse back then, and run those men, chased them for 2 or 3 days and nights, and finally come back pretty close to old Doaksville, and they thought they just about had their horses run down. Well, they had theirs run down. Well, this main man, this man Parsons had a good horse, and he had done broke the wind on his horse, had done ruined him, and so he stopped and wanted Parsons' horse, and Parsons told him, said, no, I ain't gonna let you have my horse. You'd kill him just like you killed yours. And he told him, says, we just about got him run down, and said, I won't hurt your horse. And he said, I'll tell you, when he saw he wasn't gonna let him have, says, if we'll let you pick 3 men here to look at your horse and set a price on him, and when I get back, they can look at your horse, and if they say he's hurt a bit in any way, well, I'll pay you that price for it. Well, my father was one of the 3 that was picked. Well, when he brought the horse back, why, he'd run him to death just like he had his own. He'd broke his wind, ruined the horse. And they told him, says, you owe Parsons so much that amount to the horse. Oh, that horse ain't hurt, I'm not going to pay you nothing for it. Then it went on, Parsons quit working for him, and every time this man would come to town, why, Parsons jumped for the money, and finally he told Parsons, said, if you ever mention that to me again, I'm going to kill you. Well, the next Saturday, while Parsons was there, my father and somebody else standing talking to him, and my dad said he noticed that the old man had a shotgun sitting there by the tree. He wasn't an old man then, he was a young man. And so it wasn't long till this man come walking down these old board sidewalks out there. They didn't have sidewalks, just boardwalks. Come walking, stomping down there, and Parsons said they knew what was going to happen. They moved off out of the way, and when he got up about even with Parsons, why, he told him, said, Mr. Cravens, I've come to town to collect my money today one way or the other, just whichever way you want it. And said Craven said, I told you, and ran his hand in his bosom to get his gun, and the old man stepped and picked his shotgun up, and just as this man come out with his gun, he just shot that handgun all off. Well, the white people that's in here doing anything like that, why, it's federal offense. And so the federal officers come from Muskogee and down here, well, he'd gone back in the hills, and anyway, they chased him and hunted him for a year or so. When they were building this railroad through here, he had a couple of horses, and he'd kill a pack horse load of deer, venison, and turkey, and he had a brother live there in old Doaksville, and bring them out there, and he'd take them for him and sell them to the railroad camp. So finally, the old man told me, he said, well, I could kill them federal officers any day I wanted to. They was up in there. Said, I'd sit on top of them little mountains up there and watch them ride. Said they're afraid to get off the roads. They got lost. Wouldn't know how to get out of there. But he said, I didn't want to kill anybody. He said, I killed that man Craven just as easy as I shot his hand off. And of course, it's years later he told me this. But anyway, they made a deal with his brother and told his brother, said, everybody knows that if that he shot him in self-defense, the man got pulling his gun out to shoot him, and they killed him just as well as he shot his hand off. Anyway, talked him into, through his brother, talked him into give him in, they'd let him make bond, and then he wouldn't have no trouble when the trial come up. Why, he had plenty of witnesses that saw it and knew that's how it was. But when they got him in jail up in Muskogee, why, they wouldn't give him bond. They lied to him to get to capture him. Well, he stayed around there 3 or 4 days, and he got a chance. He escaped and went back in them mountains, and they hunted him for, after the railroad got through and he had no way of making money, he got tired of. So he left here and went to Laramie, Wyoming. And Laramie, Wyoming was a new county seat town then, and this old man was a taxidermist by trade. He'd learned that from his father in Arkansas, and so he put in a taxidermist shop out there, and he told me that during hunt season and so on, why he had more work than he could do. But in the summertime, he didn't have anything much to do, and he bought him a team and wagon, and it was just doing hauling around. What they call? He used to call them dray wagons, I believe, running the dray wagon. Well, the sheriff hired him to haul gravel out of a creek bed there, and of course it's all government land, and gravel around the courthouse. And not far from where this creek bed was, where he was getting gravel, there was an old rancher that was bad and a real enemy, a big rancher. He was a wealthy man and a big enemy of the sheriff. And so he come along, and this man Parsons was loading gravel, or just about had a load loaded, and asked him who he was hauling for and so on. And he told him, said, well, he said, I ought to make you unload it. But says, you done got that loaded, says, you take that on, and you tell that sheriff that if he sends you or anybody else down here to haul gravel out of this creek again, I'll kill him. Well, when he unloaded his gravel, he went in and told the sheriff, and the sheriff, I'm skipping over a whole lot. The sheriff told him, said, well, you just be your own judge. Said that if you want to work, said you take your gun, go back down there, and if that old man messes with you, kill him. And so the old man told me all about it. Said I went back down there, took my gun, and I think this gravel pit or place was in sight of the old man's house, and said I nearly had another load loaded, and said I saw the old man coming. Said I had that old horse in a long lope, and he said he run up and set that old horse down on his hunkers and reached back and pulled that old gun and said, I told you. And he said, that's all he ever got to say. I said, I knocked him off that horse. Well, the old man and people had money and enough power and so on till they put him in jail and sentenced him, I believe, 15 years in penitentiary. But the sheriff had power enough till when they took him to the prison, they took him right on out on a road camp, to a road camp where they had prisoners working on the road. And his brother had come out there then, and actually put him in jail and having his trial while he sold his team and all that stuff, and so his brother, they put him in a never even shaved his head, put him in a tent out the edge of the camp. Well, said when it got dark, well, the other thing for him to do was walk off, and his brother met him just down the road a little piece with his gun and ammunition and all the grub that a man could carry, and he went afoot from wherever the state prison is there in Wyoming. I ain't sure just where it is, but anyway, he went right through them Rocky Mountains and got over up in there someplace on the west side of them in British Columbia, and went way in northern British Columbia and changed his name and homesteaded his place up there and built him a trap line. I believe it was 50 miles around that trap line. And I haven't got time, my throat's about gone too. But I'll tell you what, if at that time, when he told me all this, I was, a reasonable young man, and that would make one of the best-selling books you ever heard of.
When did he go to Wyoming? What year?
Well, I don't know, but it was probably in 1905 or 6, 4, 5 or 6, someplace along in there. Yeah. And he stayed now, I didn't quite finish it, but he stayed till he was getting to be an old man up there on that trap line. And the last winter, see, they had these cabins I believe every 10 miles around this line, and stopped with everything. So when them blizzards hit, they could maybe make it one cabin to another. But he told me, he said that I've sat in one of those line cabins, he called it, for as high as 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and it 60, 65, 68 below zero outside, and said I just decided that I was just getting too old to stand that kind of weather anymore. And he said that when spring come, I sold out and said I decided he'd studied the Bible and become a Christian and so on during the time, and said I decided that I wanted to straighten my life up and get things straight before I died. Well, he come back to wherever the prison is there in Wyoming, and went and turned himself in. And they said they like to never found my record, and said finally the warden found it and said, why man, you had a full pardon for 21 years. Says, where you been at? A year after he'd walked off from that line camp, the sheriff had power enough till he gave him a full pardon, you say. But he'd done such a good job of hiding till nobody couldn't find him. They didn't know where.
So what did they change his name to in Canada?
Smith.
Smith.
I believe it was Joe Smith. Yeah.
Then he came back to Fort Towson.
Yeah, he said I made up my mind if I could get settled up there in Wyoming. Said I didn't know I might spend the rest of my days in the penitentiary there. But he said I said if I ever got loose to where I could, that I was coming. He went and of course it was county land back in them days when all the land nearly had been lost for taxes in the country. And he went to a big spring back there in the Hazelets, back there on the back side of the old Bailey place up there. Big fine spring of water. He said if I said he'd camped there in his days here, I guess probably when he was on the Dodge. And he said, I said if I could ever, that I'd like to. And then I'm not going to tell you all of it because I'm run down. But after he come back here, there was a man moved a big steel in right up, and he went into the goat business, and moved a big steel right up the branch from him, and the men he had, I think that steel man had one escaped convict working for him. Some others is just about as bad, and they went to killing the old man's goats. Well, him and this whiskey man got into it, and the old man and the whiskey man burnt the old man's house down, or that is, there's no proof of it, but everybody knew. And me and my brothers helped him build a second house, and but when he burned him down, why, that old man put in the rest of his life, might say. But anyway, he wound up having the whiskey man caught, and the whiskey man was in federal prison in Missouri and died up there. But anyway, there's a lot that I haven't told you. But
Russell, is this what we call a cold springs?
No, we call it now the old Parson Spring. But it's, you know where the old Bailey house place is?
Yeah.
Well, there's a big spring there, and you go north, kind of north, yeah, I guess it'd be north, yeah, maybe a little east, over a big hill, and down into another big valley, and that's where this old Parson Spring is. And then you go over some more big hills to the old big cold spring. But either one of the three springs are running, they run a barrel of water, I guess, in 5 minutes easy anytime. Just great big branches just runs off from them all the time.
Do you have any stories about old Fort Towson?
Well, nothing only I can remember this fort. Now, I don't know. My sister might still have the picture. I guess, really, I don't remember when they took my picture, but I guess from my looks, I was about a 2-year-old. There's one of these. Now, when I first remember these house here was just almost exactly like it was when the top story burnt out during the Civil War. They hadn't been tore down, but very little. And it's long down in yonder someplace. I can't remember exactly. I might come near telling if I was out, but it's long down in there someplace. My parents was out here they said one Sunday evening. I really don't remember when they made the picture. And see, that buildings was all two-story. The top story was wood, and they was burnt out during the Civil War. Well, my father set me up on the rock wall, again, one of those old chimneys. It went way on up yonder for the second story, you see, and made my picture. And I don't know, I haven't saw it in years, and it may be lost. Or my sister, I think she let Janie Mars have a lot of those old early day Fort Towson song pictures, and I don't know, they got into kind of a squabble over it. I think Janie took them, put them in that museum up at Hugo, and I think my sister went up there and got them, but I don't know just exactly what the deal was on it. And this woman got them from her, was supposed to make some copies of them and bring the originals back to her, but she didn't do it. And so anyway, some of them, my sister, now the old hospital place is right over yonder. The man that owned this place, and there was a basement in that hospital, and he used that for a hog pen for years, and fattened his hogs out in there. Yeah.
Why did they change the name of Doaksville to Fort Towson when they moved over here?
Well, this fort was Fort Towson, and Doaksville was built, I think, by a man by the name of Doaksville, or Doaks maybe. Anyway, he built it there for a trading post for the fort. In other words, you see, when they built this fort, they and moved the Choctaw Indians from the east over the Trail of Tears. Why, they knew they had to station soldiers here to keep the wild Indians from killing them all out. Well, the Indians they brought in here and the soldiers and so on had to have or needed anyway. Maybe the government furnished the fort here with supplies, but anyway, this was built across the creek over there, old Doaksville, for a trading post for this fort here. And then it is on what was new back then is the military road through here. Oh yeah, I think of another story, Hazel, that would be funny that happened here. These Collinses down here, well, maybe I ought to tell that. Let's make some of them young ones that don't know anything about it. But anyway, did you ever hear of Pink Lick?
No, I didn't.
Well, you know, anyway, she was a half sister to these, Retha father and Claude and them father and so on. She was a half sister to them, and she had a full brother that they all come from over in Texas here. Well, this brother, he stole a horse over in Texas and went to the penitentiary. And while he was in the penitentiary, they all moved over here. Well, she married the old man Lick, and they lived right here someplace, right here in a house, right here at the fort here. Well, they was coming cattle drive through here over this old military road, and they went on through and on, and wasn't long till a cow that either a calf had died or they'd lost it or something. But anyway, she got away and was coming back bawling, hunting her calf. Well, this old lady roped that cow and took it down on the bluff and tied it up. Well, it wasn't long till a couple of riders come back hunting the cow, and she hadn't saw a thing in the world of it. And of course they went on, and she kept the cow. Well, this brother then got out of the pen and come over here, and she jumped on him about disgracing him, so stealing that horse and going to the penitentiary. And he happened to learn about her, stealing this cow. Well, he told her about it, and they got in. She jumped on him, and they got into a fight. Somebody, my father didn't see it, but somebody around here saw it. They said they had the awfulest fight you ever saw. She was a big old rough woman, and said her brother finally whipped her, but he liked to not have whipped her.
Oh,
That happened right here. I don't know just where it's at, but it's right here.
I understand Sam Houston came through here.
Well, now I don't know anything about that. They had here several years ago. Let's see, what was it? The last Southern general that surrendered during the Civil War surrendered here. I believe his name was Stan Wattie, wasn't it?
You have any questions? Need more about Fort Towson, Springfield?
well,
What'd you do for recreation in the early days?
Oh, in the early days, well, of course, we went to church, Sunday school, and it wasn't, and of course, fished, and hunted, and all kinds of things like that.
Do you have dances around here?
Oh yeah, they used to have them drunk dances around here. Yeah, when I was a boy, that is after I got up pretty good size. Well, I never did. I've tasted whiskey, and the only whiskey that I ever consumed was in medicine or in cough syrup or something like that. But I'd rather take back in those early days. Why, the medicine we had to take here was calomel and quinine. Quinine for the fever. There's lots of malarial in these bottoms. Lots of these old malarial mosquitoes here, but anyway. I'd go to these dances. I learned, well, when I was just a kid, I don't know, first, second year of school here at Fort Towson, they put on a play and taught us kids square dance, a group of us. Well, when I got bigger and they was having dances out there in our country, why, I already knew how to square dance, and I loved square dance. But I soon learned I wouldn't drink with them. I've helped pay the boys pay for many a half a gallon of whiskey. Of course, it didn't cost hardly anything. Seemed like you buy a half a gallon for $1 back in them days. But I'd give a quarter on it. We'd go in someplace to dance, and I'd make them think I was drinking. It'd be dark, and I'd turn the jar up, and then I'd just spit and cut up like they would, It burning them up nearly. Never even taste of it. Well, I learned right quick, and there was, maybe 3 or 4, 5 other boys around and make most of the dances the same way. We learned, the other boys, by the time the dance get going good, they'd done down drunk out on the porch out in the yard, and us boys, just a few of us, we just danced ourselves to death all night with them girls. I've took many a girl home that some boy brought her to the dance, and he was down drunk, wasn't able to take her home, and I took her home.
Russell, do you remember the Dr. Hightower that was here at Fort Towson?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He made his own medicine.
Okay. Do you recall anything about maybe he killed his wife with some of his medicine?
Well, it was suspicion he did. There was talk of that, all right. I don't think they ever proved it on him.
When you were were a small boy, what kind of mischief did you get into?
Come on now.
Well, I just trying to think. I know I've done plenty of things I oughtn't to done, and I helped steal a couple of watermelons once, but that was the only thing I ever knew of that I stole. But then we'd get out and ride yearlings and do things like that we wasn't supposed to do, of course. and really, of course, when I got bigger and so on, well, we'd run horse races and so on, and wasn't supposed to do that. I know there was a boy down there at Swink that I wasn't there, but they were running horse races, and the horse fell and killed him, broke his neck, and of course now the boys. Oh yeah, I think one thing I need to tell. I wasn't into this. Those Lick boys, one of the Lick boys and one of the Childers boys, they was drunk nearly all the time. Their parents made them up to whiskey all the time. Why, up the creek here is what's known as the old Johnson Earing place, and the old Indian place, and they're buried over there. Well, them old boys, they got drunk one night, and they decided old Johnson was and he was the head of the family. They decided there's bound to be money in his grave. Well, them boys went over there and dug that grave up. Well, they got in home. You know where the old lake place is, Hazel. Well on about midnight, and they was both drunk. Well, there's a big old house, and they went in and back and didn't go in to their room, and their mother, one of them, Miss Lick, heard them talking to somebody in there and talking to John and just having a big time, and so she got up and slipped back there as a kind of ale went down the house back there and eased the door open and looked in there, and they had this old Indian skull sitting up on the dresser. And they were just carrying on a big conversation with him. Well, of course, that scared them to death, and they liked to got them. Their daddy, this one boy's daddy got up and made them go right back, take that right back and bury it back that night. But yet, I don't know, the officials someway found out it had been dug up, and I think it did cost them right smart to get out of it. I don't remember just how it was. Yeah.
Do you remember Armistice Day? When the war ended?
Oh yeah. World War I. Yeah. Oh yeah.
What you think about that day? Was there a big celebration here?
Well, of course we lived 5 miles from town out, and they had some kind of a celebration, but we wasn't at it. Now, I'll tell you what I do remember very plainly. During World War I, they had a train come through raising, selling war bonds. And they had a German airplane they had shot down and on that train, and then they had some German cannons they'd captured and so on, and I don't know just what all, but neighbor boy and I had went to town about something, and we didn't even know this was on. Of course, them days had no television or anything, and just what you got in a weekly paper was all you knew, you know. Well, we went to town, and this program was on there. Well, we went down there, and you'd go through and and look at all this stuff in this train, and then come out, and then there was men there making speeches and trying to sell them. I was selling those war bonds. Well, we went through it in about a week. Well, just nearly everybody went down with that flu, and me and this boy took it. And they thought that you know, on that war stuff where it started from. And anyway, it just went all over this country, and they wasn't, in a week's time, nearly all the doctors in Fort Towson, or all of them was down with it. And people just died. Our family and this boy that I was with, you know, he was older, really a young man. We were the only two families right there in our neighborhood, and then around way on down, maybe plumb in Fort Towson here. There wasn't as much as one member of the family died of that flu. Well, I remember yet, I was so sick and so weak that but I can remember this old gentleman was kind of a neighborhood doctor. Kind of they had them back in those days. They wasn't, they called them country doctors. They wasn't really doctors. They just knew how to give calomel and quinine and stuff like that. Well, he come over there, and him and my father was talking, and they'd done tried to get the doctor out of town here, and they had down with the flu and couldn't get him. And he told my father, he said, the only thing I know to do is just treat it like it was malaria. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back home, and he mixed calomel and colocin, I don't know what that was, together, and gave it as a purgative, and then big doses of castor oil, and then after done that, took around that while you took quinine. But anyway, he said, I'm going to doctor it just like it's malaria. Well, I know that was one morning. Well, during the next night, there was two of the girls run over to our house, and they wanted my father to come over there. This boy's name was Robert, and they told him, said, Robert, we think Robert's dying. Said, he's just about gone. And so my father went over there, and he come back about daylight, and I know I heard him talking to my mother, said, I'm sure it's going to work. Says, I think the old man overdosed Robert just a little bit and like killed him, but said, I believe it's going to work. Said, that's the only thing. Said, Russell's going to die if we don't give him something. Said, all I know to do is to let the old man go to dose it out for him. Well, the old man come, and he'd dose out this medicine. He'd take a tablet, and he'd cut those pieces of paper just right, and he'd take the point of a knife, and he'd put so much calomel, so much of this colocin, mix it all up, and put it on paper and fold it, each dose to itself, and then he'd dose out that raw quinine just out of a bottle, just the same way. And then it was up to you to take that mess, and I've had to take a lot of it. Lord have mercy. And then that castor oil after that calomel and colocin. And of course, up till we got the quinine. Now that loose quinine in your mouth and just take water to wash it down with, that's something too. Yes, sir.
Did you know any of the old Indians that came on the Trail of Tears?
No, they've been here too long, I'm pretty sure. I'm sure I knew Of course, I knew the Wilsons, but I know they didn't come here. Now their parents probably come here over the Trail of Tears. Well, old Gleason Durant, I'm sure he wasn't old enough to come over the lake. I'm sure he wasn't, but I'm satisfied his parents did. And now I know people that their descendants come here over the Trail of Tears, but I'm sure I'm not sure old enough to know any of them. No.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Well, you talked about an hour and a half, so I want to thank you. Oh, what's your address?
Box 64, Fort Towson.
Fort Towson. And what's his zip code?
8473.
I'm sorry.
No, wait a minute. 74735. I get mixed up. My old head don't work good anymore.
Well, Mr. Thornburgh, I want to thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm just glad and hope I could
Oh, yeah.
wish I knew more, but you know, now I just wish this could have been done back in the days when you knew old Henry Coker.
Yes, sir.
Now that old bugger, he really knew. He was here, way on back there, and he really knew lots of things. He lived out there at old Doaksville when the town's there, and anyway, now I'll tell you, are you all going down Claude's?
Yeah.
Claude's, last time I was there to see him, he's pitiful, he's bedfast, but and he's, I expect Claude's 5 years, maybe older than me. I don't know. No, yeah, Claude's about 84, I guess. He's about 4 years older than I am, and but his old mind, he can remember things better than I can.
Well, now Willie Adams.
Yeah, we're going to Willie Adams.
Well, Willie's sharp too. Now I don't know whether was Willie born here in the territory, or he'd have to.
I think so.
Was he? Claude was born in the territory. Claude's mother come here. In other words, my grandfather and grandmother and father, and my father had a sister at home, come here in that wagon train, and then my father's sister and her husband, old man John Husky, Lynn Husky's daddy, and his family come. They had, I think, 2 wagons and come. Well, this old Uncle John, we always called him, he had been married there in Missouri and had 4 children by his first wife, and she died, and he married my aunt, my father's sister. And at the time they come here, they had 1 son, 1 child, and that was Bill Husky. Well, anyway, Claude's mother was old Uncle John Husky's daughter by his first wife. And her name was Emma, and she married George Collins. And another one of the girls married Tom Fennell, was the postmaster at old Doaksville, and was still postmaster at Fort Towson when they moved in there, and was postmaster. He was a Republican, and he was postmaster till they changed presidents, and then he went out, and then they moved to Arizona, And you know, that woman was back here to visit Claude, and we went to see her. Oh, not too many years ago, since I've been living uptown there. And anyway, it's been several years since she died, but she was 104 when she died out there in Arizona.
Your folks ever talk about the wagon train coming down here?
Yeah, I heard them talk.
What did they say about the trip down here?
Well, they started out and they come down through that sunkland country there in southeast Missouri and come in on to across the Black River there in northeast Arkansas and camped in there, and they thought about stopping there. It said there's some of the richest, finest farming land there in the world. And anyway, they camped and stayed there 2 or 3 weeks, and looked at several different places, and all these places sale belonged to the widow so and so. And they got to kind of investigate and so on, and they found out that there's such heavy dews and so much malaria on so on there in that river bottom that the men folks just didn't live no length of time. And so they decided to get out of there. and they come on then through and they camped at this old pleated spring that's covered up in the lake down here and stayed here several days and liked it here. But yet they'd started west. They hadn't got far enough west. So they went way on out in western Oklahoma and turned around and come back here. They got out there, the wind was so bad, the sand blowing and so on, they didn't like it out there. And they come back here. And I've heard my father say a lot of times that this was the best lazy man's country there was, he thought, in the world. He said if you wanted a bale of cotton, you planted an acre of cotton, or if you wanted 50 bushels of corn, you planted an acre of corn. Or if you wanted some meat, if you wanted deer or turkey, you just got your gun and went out and killed it. Or if you wanted to run hogs outside, now during them days here, if you turned anything outside, you had to have a permit from an Indian to turn them out. And when they first come here, this old fort place here, it belonged to, of course, really didn't belong to them, but the floors had took this area up, you see, and they counted as theirs. And later on, when the land was allotted, why, it was allotted to the LaFleur family. Well, across the road east there, they was placed in there in a house, and there's some man had rented the place from the old lady LaFleur and made a crop there. Well, crops was laid by when they got back from the west down here. And he wanted to sell out, and some of his folks lived on over there where Joe Mattie lives, not there, but on that place. And there's kinfolks, I think, and they wanted to sell out, so my uncle bought that and out over there and got that house, and my grandparents and father bought this and here out. But by the time they gathered the crop, why, over west of the cemetery and west of Doaksville, the old Willie Wilson, that was his old home place. He lived over there, and he had several places out in that country, and they rented one of them, and only lived here just long enough to gather the crop, and then so moving time in the fall and moved over there. But my uncle, he lived over yonder on the place where Joe Mattie lived, so he built his home there in Fort Towson and moved in there.
Anything else? That's it. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.